December 27, 1944. Near the Alsatian town of Rimling, France, 4:30 p.m. The light is failing, a cruel, slate-gray dusk that seems to bleed into the frozen earth. A cutting wind sweeps down from the Vosges mountains, whistling through the shattered pines and rustling the icy camouflage nets of the 100th Infantry Division's positions. In a shallow, carefully dug rifle pit on the forward slope, Private First Class Harold Hal Garman shifts his weight, a futile attempt to ward off the deep bone ache of the cold. His breath plumes in short, sharp bursts. His focus is absolute, locked on the silent, sinister tree line 200 yards across the no-man's land, a dark scar on the white landscape held by the 11th Panzer Division. But the real tension isn't just out there, it's right here, in his hands. Nestled against his shoulder is the source of the week's quiet jokes, the raised eyebrows from the veterans, the M1 carbine. To the hardened men around him, the carbine is a pop gun, a glorified pistol, issued to officers and rear echelon types. It's not the powerful, thumping M1 Garand, the weapon that defined American infantry. The Garand had heft. It fired the .306 cartridge, a round that could punch through a brick wall. The carbine's .3 caliber pistol round? It was for close-in work, they said, a defensive tool. When the company quartermaster had issued it to Garman, a replacement from Illinois, a few of the old-timers had chuckled. "Hope you brought a slingshot too, kid." In a division nicknamed the Century for its brutal casualty rates, your rifle was your life, and Garman, they implied, had been shortchanged. He hears the soft crunch of snow. Sergeant Mitchell slides into the pit beside him, his Garand looking massive in comparison. He doesn't look at Garman, his eyes scanning the tree line. "Anything?" "Quiet, Sarge." Mitchell's gaze flicks to the carbine, a barely perceptible sigh. "Just remember what I told you. Aim for the face, or make sure you're real close." It wasn't malice, it was the grim calculus of survival. The carbine's lighter round was notorious for lacking stopping power. It could wound, but against a fanatical, winter-clad enemy, it might not put a man down. The advice was a morbid kindness. Garman just nods, his cheek resting on the cold stock. He knows the jokes, he's felt the doubt, but this is what he has, and he's a crack shot with it. The carbine is light, fast, with virtually no recoil, a 15-round magazine. He can get back on target quicker than any Garand man. He believes in the weapon. He has to. As full dark envelops the position, a new sound cuts the air, not from the German line, but from behind them, the low, guttural growl of trank tracks, then another, and another. Panzer. The word travels through the foxholes like an electric current. The 11th Panzer isn't just holding that tree line, they're probing, testing the thin American line for a weak spot. And with this darkness, this isolating, all-consuming winter dark, they found their moment. The first MG-42 burst tears the night apart, a sound like ripping canvas, tracer rounds etching angry red lines towards the American center. Then the crump of mortars walking closer, shouts in German. The shadowy forms of panzer grenadiers begin to emerge from the woods, using the covering fire to advance. Stand to! Stand to! The line erupts. Garands barked, their flashes blinding in the dark. Garman squeezes the trigger of his carbine. Pop, pop, pop. The report is sharper, higher pitched, lost in the cacophony. He sees a shape fall, then another, but they keep coming. The German attack is a sledgehammer aimed at a single critical point, the gap between Garman's company and the next. If they crack it, they can roll up the entire battalion. In the chaos, Garman sees the shadows of his squad members pulling back, repositioning under the overwhelming fire. A mortar shell explodes near his pit, showering him with dirt and ice. For a terrifying moment, he's alone. The German infantry are closing in, their muzzle flashes now terrifyingly close. He is the tip of the spear, the crack in the line that is about to split wide open. He has 15 rounds in the magazine, and an entire enemy assault is bearing down on his position. That single, paralyzing thought cuts through the adrenaline sharper than the wind.
The German assault has swept around his position like a dark tide, engulfing the foxholes to his left and right. The crump of grenades, the screams, American and German, are horrifically close. Tracers whip just overhead. In the strobing flashes of light, Garmin sees the looming shapes of the Panzer Grenadiers moving past him, towards the heart of the American line. They haven't seen him. Not yet. His training screams at him to fall back, to link up with whatever's left of his squad. But the sergeant's voice, the old-timer's jokes, they echo now as a challenge. Aim for the face. Make sure you're real close. He makes a decision. He doesn't retreat. He becomes a ghost. He eases down, making himself smaller in the pit. The carbine, so light, so easy to maneuver, is brought up to the lip of the frozen earth. His breathing slows. The world narrows to the slice of hell illuminated by burning phosphorus and muzzle flashes. A two-man German machine gun team, lugging an MG-42, scrambles for a new firing position just 30 yards to his front. They are setting up to enfilade his company's retreating remnants. Pop, pop. Two quick, almost polite sounds from the carbine. The first gunner stumbles, the heavy MG-42 dropping into the snow. The assistant gunner turns, confused. Pop. He falls over his weapon. Garmin doesn't celebrate. He moves. In the chaos, the distinct report of his carbine is swallowed whole. To the Germans, those shots could have come from anywhere. He crab crawls 5 yards to a new depression, his eyes already searching. There is no fear now. There is only the mechanics of the hunt. Acquire, fire, displace. The carbine is perfect for this. No heavy bolt action to work, no 8-round ping of an expended Garand clip to give away his position. Just a smooth trigger pull and the quiet click of the firing pin on an empty chamber when the magazine runs dry. He reloads. The magazine slides in with a positive click. He finds another target, a German officer waving an arm, directing a squad around a disabled Sherman tank. 70 yards. Garmin exhales, lets the world go still for half a second, and squeezes. The officer collapses. He is no longer a soldier in a line. He is a disruption, a sniper in the enemy's rear using their own momentum, their own noise as his camouflage. They are focused on the breakthrough ahead, not the shadow behind. A grenadier runs right past his hole, close enough for Garmin to see the frost on his woolen coat. Pop. At point-blank range, the .30 carbine round is devastating. The dance of death continues for minutes that feel like hours. Displace, observe, fire. The carbine's light report is his greatest ally. A German Feldwebel, savvy and suspicious, starts scanning the flanks, barking orders. He's piecing it together. The casualties are coming from behind their advance. He points towards Garmin's general area. A squad peels off, moving with predatory intent. Garmin is cornered. He's taken down at least 5 men that he's sure of. His ammunition is dwindling, and now the hunters have become the hunted. He presses himself into the frozen dirt as the cautious, steady crunch of jackboots on snow grows closer. They are methodically clearing the area, checking every hollow. A silhouette appears at the edge of his hole, the long barrel of a Kar 98K rifle sweeping down. This is it. Close enough to see the man's eyes, wide with the sudden recognition of a shape in the dark. Garmin's carbine is already leveled. There is no time to aim. He fires from the hip. The shot was deafening this close. A final, sharp crack that left Garmin's ears ringing in the sudden, awful silence that followed. The German soldier folded forward, his rifle clattering against the frozen edge of the hole before he slumped into the snow. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Garmin's own breath sounded ragged, monstrously loud to his own ears. He waited for the answering burst of fire, for the grenade to come arcing into his pit. It didn't come. The squad that had been hunting him was now leaderless, confused. In the darkness and the tangled noise of the wider battle, the precise source of the shot was a mystery. To them, the enemy was everywhere and nowhere. Their advance toward the American main line had stalled, their momentum bled away by this invisible, persistent sting from their rear. Garmin used the hesitation. He moved again, not back toward the American lines, but laterally, a shadow flitting between shell craters and the hulks of broken equipment. His mind was cold, clear, operating on pure instinct. He was no longer just surviving, he was shaping the battlefield. Every shot was a calculation. That machine gun team first, neutralize the heaviest threat. The officer next, decapitate the coordination. The grenadier who got too close, remove the immediate danger. Now the hunter who found him, preserve his own position of advantage. He found a new vantage behind the burning wreck of a jeep, the heat from the flames a blasphemous comfort against his face. He peered around. The German probe had lost its cohesion. Without the officer's direction, and with men falling to shots from the darkness, the assault faltered. Small groups were beginning to pull back toward the tree line, dragging their wounded with them. They were leaving behind a skirmish line to cover the retreat. Garman saw one such covering position. 2 men behind a fallen log, their attention split between the American line and the ghost in their rear. They were 80 yards away, a long shot for the carbine in the dark. He steadied the barrel against the hot metal of the jeep's frame. He aimed not for the center mass, but higher, for the silhouette of a head and shoulders above the log. He adjusted for the drop of the lighter round. He fired. One man jerked and went still. The other, panicked, sprayed the darkness with his MP40, the muzzle flash painting him as a perfect target for a single aimed shot. Pop. 11. The number clicked in his mind, an automatic tally. 11 certain kills in less than an hour. The weapon in his hands, the laughed-at, doubted pop gun, had done this. Its very weaknesses had become its lethal strengths. The low report, the light recoil, the high-capacity magazine. It was the perfect tool for this specific, brutal kind of work. As suddenly as it began, the pressure lifted. The German mortar fire ceased. The machine guns fell silent. The attack was broken. In the distance, Garman could hear the shouts of American NCOs, regrouping, re-establishing the line. The crack had been sealed, not by a unit, but by the stubborn, lethal persistence of one man and his rifle. Slowly, the adrenaline began to recede, leaving a profound, trembling exhaustion in its wake. His fingers, clenched around the carbine's handguard, were numb. The stock was smudged with powder burns and frost. He looked at it, truly looked at it for the first time since the fight began. It was no longer just a piece of issued equipment. It was an extension of his will. The proof was lying still and silent in the snow around him. He stood up, his muscles protesting. The battlefield was now quiet, save for the moans of the wounded and the crackle of burning fuel. He began the slow, careful walk back toward what was left of his company. He was no longer just PFC Harold Garman, replacement. He was the man who had held the line, and in his hands he carried the reason why. Sergeant Mitchell emerged from the gloom, his face grimy and etched with fatigue. He looked at Garman, then past him at the field of German dead that marked Garman's solitary stand. His eyes fell to the M1 carbine, its barrel still faintly smoking in the cold air. He didn't laugh. He didn't joke. He simply nodded, a slow, deep gesture of respect that said more than any medal ever could. But the war wasn't over. The night wasn't either. And as Garman slumped into a dugout, accepting a canteen from a silent comrade, a new sound began to rumble in the east. The Germans weren't done. They were regrouping for a counterpunch, and the story of the carbine and the man who wielded it was about to enter its final, brutal chapter.
June 14th, 1945. The White House, Washington, D.C. The air is thick, not with cordite and fear, but with the solemn weight of history and the rustle of formal dress uniforms. Sunlight streams through tall windows, illuminating motes of dust that dance like silent tracer fire. In this room of polished wood and quiet awe, a young man from Illinois stands rigid at attention. His uniform is pristine, the khaki sharp against his skin, which still carries the pale memory of a European winter. On his chest, where mud and frost once clung, now rests the pale blue ribbon of the Medal of Honor. President Harry S. Truman places the medal around Harold Garman's neck. The weight is immense. It is not just the medal. It is the weight of 11 men in a snow-filled field.
It is the weight of a decision to stand alone. It is the weight of a weapon, once doubted, now vindicated. But let's rewind the film, back to Rimling, because the story of December 27, 1944, didn't end with the dawn. The German command, furious at the failure of their probing attack, threw a heavier force at the 100th Division lines the next day, and Garman, his carbine cleaned and reloaded, was right back in the line. This time, there were no jokes. The men who had chuckled days before now watched him with a new, intense interest. They saw how he moved with that carbine, a fluid, instinctual part of him. They saw the calm precision. When the next assault came, a brutal clash of artillery and close-quarters combat, Garman did it again. He broke up another German attack, targeting leaders and machine gunners, his lighter, faster rifle allowing him to acquire targets while Garand men were still cycling their bolts. He wasn't just a good shot, he was a tactical problem solver, using his unique tool to solve the deadliest equations on the battlefield. The citation for his Medal of Honor would coldly summarize the math. He prevented the enemy from capturing his company's command post. By his accurate fire, he killed 11 of the enemy. But the men of his company understood the poetry beneath the prose. He hadn't just killed 11 enemy soldiers, he had shattered at assault. He had saved countless American lives. He had turned a defensive position into a killing ground, and he had done it with the rifle everyone laughed at. The legacy of that night rippled out far further than the frozen fields of Alsace. In training camps across the United States and in replacement depots across Europe, the story began to circulate, changing from a rumor to a legend. You hear about the kid with the carbine? Took out a whole German attack by himself. The weapon's reputation began to shift. It was no longer just a rear-echelon weapon. In the hands of a soldier who understood its strengths, its rapid fire, its handling in close quarters, its effectiveness in the hands of a marksman who aimed for vitals, it was a devastating implement of war. Garman himself never saw it as a story about the rifle. To him, it was a story about the position, the necessity, the fight for the man beside you. In later interviews, he was relentlessly, almost painfully humble. He gave credit to his training, to his unit, to the sheer necessity of the moment. The carbine was just what he had. He simply used it. But history begs to differ. His story became the ultimate case study in the principle that it is not the weapon alone, but the will of the man wielding it. The M1 carbine by war's end would be one of the most produced firearms in American history, over 6 million made. It served in every theater, in the hands of paratroopers, officers, tank crews, and infantrymen like Garman. It had its limitations, yes, but after Rimling, no one could ever dismiss it as just a pop gun again. It had been blooded and proven in the most definitive way possible. As President Truman shook his hand that day in 1945, Harold Garman was not just a hero. He was a quiet, living rebuttal to doubt. He was proof that courage can be found in the frost of a rifle pit, and that history can be changed not by the roar of the cannon, but by the precise, repeated pop of a single determined rifle. He stepped back from the president, turned, and faced the room. The photographer's bulbs flashed, freezing him in time. But if you look closely at those old black and white photos, past the medal, past the formal pose, you might imagine the faintest sensation in his hands, not the weight of the medal, but the memory of a different weight, the comfortable, balanced, lethal weight of the rifle they laughed at, the rifle that on one impossible night held the line.